Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining. In this video, we will be going through an overview of two books which form the end of a series which began with Secret to a World Without Taxes and Living in a World Without Taxes. The first book is Even Muslims Do Not Know This About Islam, and the title alludes to the fact that we don't expect the non-Muslims to know this, but it is something that is so widely unknown that even Muslims are ignorant of it, and that's what that book covers. And the second book is Shariah, the Best Kept Secret, subtitled Why Do We Keep Getting Sick and How to Fix It. These books, the background to it, for many years I had been looking at or trying to find an answer to why the world is such a sick state, and the hope was that if I could find the reason, even though the solution may be out of my hands, if I could find the reason, then it would help maybe others to implement some sort of remedial action. But parallel to that, I was having another problem. I am a practicing medical doctor. I attend to patients every day. And what I find is increasingly, as the years were going by, patients were coming in with complaints that were the consequences of stress. They were functioning at a high level of stress, so that every small thing in life became a major problem. And in assessing these patients, we look at the biological factors, psychological factors, social factors. And I found that increasingly the problem was something in society that was making people very stressed. And people will say, oh yes, there's job insecurity, there's crime, there's financial problems, there's the corruption with government. Yes, those are all there. But those are symptoms. Those are symptoms. That is not the problem. In medicine, we are trained when assessing a patient and has multiple symptoms to try and find a single diagnosis that explains all the symptoms. And so that is what I was faced with. Patients with a whole lot of different symptoms, but there had to be a single root cause. And that is what I was looking for. And that's together with the fact that I am a Muslim and I spent time studying the Quran, things came together and resulted in me finding an answer. But there's something I need to say to everyone right now. This message is not for Muslims or non-Muslims. This message is for the entire human race. If we are going to understand the books, then there is certain background information that we need to know. So let's go through that briefly. The Almighty tells us that the earth and heaven was created before man, and then man was created. Now, once again, you don't have to believe any of this. You don't have to believe God exists. You don't have to believe that the Quran is from God. The message is nonetheless for you. It's also for those who are believers. When we look at the history as God has given us, He created man, and man populated the earth. And over the years, God sent messengers to the people. Who was the message being sent to? In each village, in each town where the messenger came, God sent in total over 124,000 messengers. And when these messengers came to the village, they were the only ones who had this knowledge. And they were sharing it with the others in the village, whether it was their family, their relatives, their friends. So the message that came was for everyone. So if you are someone who has not embraced Islam, this message is nonetheless for you and for everyone else. Okay, but what was the message? God saw fit to send this message. Over 124,000 messengers with one single message. And that message was, there is no God but God. There is no God but God. We have to ask ourselves, what is so important about this single message that God would see fit to send over 124,000 people to deliver this one message? And there was one thing that was common throughout the ages. Number one, the message was embraced by those who were the common folk, the poor people, and the elites, the rulers, the pharaohs. They were vociferously against it. What's so powerful about this message? There is no God but God. Why does it rile you so much? So, when we say there is no God but God, the first question that arises is, what is a God? We say there's no God but God, so what is God? The only relevant distinction I can find is that there is God and there is everyone else, and the relationship between us and God is that of worship. God qualifies to be worshipped and others not. So God makes God what one is because we worship God. But the corollary to that also is true, that if I choose to worship something or someone, to me, that something or someone is a God. So God is someone we worship. So the next question that arises is, what is worship? For God says there is no God but God, and we know that God is someone we worship. So what is worship? The definition of worship given in the Quran is that the one we obey is the one we worship. The references, the verse and chapter you'll find in the book. I'm not going to go through the references. I just want to try and keep this simple. The one we obey is the one we worship. So what God is saying, God, there is no God but God. There is no one worthy of worship but God. There is no one worthy of being obeyed but God. Think about it. God is telling us that He is the sole source of our guidance. Relevant. He is the only relevant source of our guidance. If we were smart, we will follow His guidance. We will not follow the rules and dictates of anyone else. They are not worthy of making rules and regulations. If we are not going to obey them, if we are going to obey God alone, it means they are not competent to even make those laws and rulings. So God is telling us, I am the only one worthy of being obeyed. You don't obey anybody else. And if you do that, it will be good for you in this world and in the hereafter. We're going to obey God alone. There is no one else worthy of worship. God alone is the one we worship. Now we can understand why all these leaders rejected this message, because what gives them power? The power they have is the power to make law. To make law that binds other people. That is the power. And God is saying, don't obey them. So if we don't obey them and we obey God alone, the Quran, which is God's guidance, becomes our source of guidance. We use the Quran. We don't obey anybody else. So how is society going to function if man does not have the power to make laws? It's only the laws that God has given us that is the laws that we should obey. Now there's two things about the guidance that God gives us in the Quran that is very important. The first is that the Quran repeatedly tells us that there is no compulsion. The guidance is given to us, but we have a choice whether we accept it or not. You may say, I don't believe God exists. I don't believe the Quran is from God. But I will study the book and see what it says, because God says, I have perfected your religion for you. This is a perfect religion for mankind, forever and ever. You won't get a better guidance for you. We got to raise that. We got to challenge that. Say, if that is the best guidance for us, let's have a look at it and see what it's saying. And God is saying, don't obey man, just obey me. And you will obey me if you are following the Quran. So how is society going to function if man is not able to make laws? Two issues that arise. What is law? What is the purpose of law? What role does it serve? And what is government? In order for there to be order in society, there has got to be some set of rules. And the Quran is telling us the rules that it gives us is all we need. So, if that's all we need, what is the role of government? What is the role of law? We get an understanding of this from an incident in the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he was seeing off his governor for Yemen, he asked him, how will you adjudicate when people come to you with their problems, with their disputes? How are you going to adjudicate? He didn't ask him where you're going to have your parliament. He didn't ask him when you're going to hold elections. He said, how are you going to adjudicate? That is the rule, that is the purpose, that is the duty, that is the purpose, that is the role of the leader. He is a member of the judiciary. He is the chief judge. His purpose is to adjudicate those matters which nobody else can adjudicate. And if that is your law, that is your rule, that is your role, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, you use the Quran as your sole source of guidance. So our leader governs, he adjudicates disputes by seeking his answers in the Quran. That is the purpose of law. The purpose of law in society is to provide us with a framework, a legal framework, which is transparent, which is reliable, which is honest, which is moral, that we can use in solving disputes without having to resort to violence. That is the purpose of law. Not to tell people how to live your life, not to tell you how fast you can drive, not to impose taxes upon us. That's not the purpose of law. That is abuse of law. And when man abuses law and takes the power of making laws, He is now taking the power of God. He is a pseudo-God. But unlike God, who says there is no compulsion, man's laws imposes compulsions. And the second thing, though the Quran tells us that there is no compulsion in religion, we are also compelled not to impose the teachings of the Quran on anybody else. We're not allowed to do that. If what we hear happened under the Taliban in Afghanistan, where women were not allowed to study, etc., that is not possible under Islam. That is only possible under democracy. Democracy allows you to create these institutions which will make laws, and you can impose it on people and punish them for not obeying. Only democracy allows that, not Islam. So the purpose of society, of the law, is to provide the framework, and the duty of the leader is to judge in terms of the law, to judge in terms of the Quran. So we have a situation in society. We have now this set of laws, and the question arises, when the leader adjudicates in a matter, are we allowed to challenge the ruling? Is there a place for appeal? Yes, there is. During the time of the caliphs, the third caliph, Uthman radiallahu anhu, a case was brought before him. A lady was accused of adultery based on the fact that the age of the child which was born would suggest that she had conceived before marriage. And Uthman heard the case, and he judged her guilty and imposed and judged that she should be punished. And then Ali radiallahu anhu, who was later to become the fourth caliph, approached Uthman and said, how could you make such a ruling? Because the Quran says this and this and this, and in terms of that, it is quite in order that she could have actually conceived after the marriage. And Uthman looked at it. He immediately accepted, no, you are right. He repealed, he took back his ruling, and he dropped the case, and the lady was set free to go. So yes, we can appeal. What is our relationship to the ruler? Now the ruler is there. He is going to be adjudicating in our cases. What is our relation to it? And again, we get an inkling on this in an instance in the life of Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad, in the company of his companions, mentioned, you must always stand by your Muslim brother. You must always stand by your Muslim brother. And the companions all nodded their head, yes, they understood. And then he said something which really surprised them. He said, whether he is the oppressed or he is the oppressor. I can just see the companions looking at each other. This is not the Islam we know. One of them raised his voice and said, Ya Rasulullah, we understand obeying or standing by our brother who is the oppressed, but the oppressor? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, you stand by your brother who is the oppressor by stopping him from carrying out his oppression. So while we are told that the job of the leader is to adjudicate, we are told that if he goes out of line, and if he starts making his own laws, and if he starts acting and adjudicating outside of the Quran, it is your duty to stop him. It is your duty to stop him. But there are people who tell us, hey, the Quran tells us, obey Allah, the Prophet, and those in authority amongst you. The Quran is saying it. You're supposed to obey your leader. When you interpret the Quran, you have to interpret in a way that it is in keeping with everything else in the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that there is no God but God. There is no one worthy of worship but God. There is no one worthy of being obeyed by God. He is not saying that the ruler can make his own laws and you must obey the ruler. He is saying when your ruler gives a just decision based on the Quran, you must obey him, you must accept his decision. That is what he is telling us. So what will our society be like if we adopted the Quran and rejected man-made laws? When we reject man-made laws, we're not rejecting law. The purpose of law is just to adjudicate the matters. We already have common law. We already have Roman law and Islamic law, or the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, this is the best guidance for you. Leave those other laws. Follow the one that I'm giving you. And if we were to follow that, we would be set free from the subjugation and the slavery that man imposes upon us through the power of law. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God Almighty, does not want man to have the right to make laws, because that power of making laws is so powerful that man invariably becomes consumed by it. Look at Donald Trump right now. Look, he is a perfect example of that. He's become a mini god. He's signing executive orders every day, controlling the whole world. Our governments pass laws. We are paying tax. There's a whole lot of things that the government does and imposes upon us, and they use the law as the excuse. We have to obey. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you obey me, you don't obey those. You don't follow that. And if we don't follow that, we are saved from the oppression of fellow man. Mankind has become slaves. Why do I say slaves? What is a slave? A slave is someone who doesn't own the fruit of his labor. Now, if you enter into an agreement with someone and you say, okay, I'm going to provide the service, you pay me so much. And at the end of the day, you get your money, you take your money, you go, you spend it. You're a free man. But what happens if, when you got your money, somebody comes and taps you on your shoulder and says, hey, hand it over. And he takes it and says, fine, that's yours, this man's, now go work some more. That man owns you. You are that man's slave. And that's the situation we have today. Government owns what we earn and will determine how much we are allowed to keep. When we go back to obeying God alone, the price of petrol will drop by half. All goods, there will be no more value-added tax. All prices will come down by 15%. We will become masters of our own lives. We will be able to protect ourselves, defend ourselves without any fear. All the things that's causing us stress will disappear. It will be much more easier to seek employment because the employers are not burdened by a whole lot of red tape, which is nothing more but laws and regulations made by man imposing control upon us. We would be free to employ people. People would be able to take on different employments without all these regulations. Life would be completely different. We would be free. And that is what the Almighty is offering us, freedom. Obey God, don't obey man, and you will be a free person. We don't have to believe that the Quran is from God, but if we adopt the Quran as our source of guidance, as our source that is used to adjudicate cases, we actually set ourselves free. And because no one can impose the teachings of the Quran on anyone else, even though you don't believe in God, you are allowed to lead your life the way you choose. And that is what this is what the secret is. The secret that has been kept hidden from us, from which in fact it is seriously politically incorrect to even talk about these things. Governments around the world co-opt religious people to preach that you must obey your government, you must obey man-made laws. There's no Islamic government in the world. There's no Islamic country in the world. Every one of them has a legislature that makes laws. In an Islamic country, there is no legislature because there's no laws to make. Even to the extent of telling us how fast we can drive on the road. And when it comes to obeying the Quran, the guidance is obey it completely and totally. Don't introduce any of your own ideas and thoughts. And we have an incident in the life of Umar radiallahu anhu, the second caliph, at a social gathering. He mentioned in passing, they were talking about the meher. The meher is the gift that the man gives to his wife-to-be when they get married at the wedding. This gift is hers. It never falls, it does not fall under the husband's control. That remains the wife's property. But if the marriage is dissolved, the husband is entitled to 50% of the meher in a case where the marriage had not been consummated. If the marriage was consummated, then she's entitled to all of it. Amar radiallahu anhu was saying, Amr was saying, don't give big tariffs, a big meher. Don't give a large amount, because then it becomes difficult for you to relinquish it. It becomes difficult to relinquish it. If you want to relinquish it, give a small amount. And a lady who was in the company, they approached Amr and said, "Oh, leader of the believers, are you making your own law? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that it is good for you to give away the entire meher, even if it's millions and millions and millions." And the implication of that is you can't give a meher which is millions and millions. And Ammar radiallahu anhu thought about it and said, the lady is correct, I withdraw what I said. You can give how much you want. That is the extent to which the Muslims understood obedience to the Quran in every aspect totally. You do not obey anyone else, not even yourself. Everything you must seek reference to the Quran, and that will be the perfect way of life. And if you live like that, you will get freedom in this life, freedom from oppression of your man, freedom of enslavement, and you'll have paradise in the hereafter. That is what is being offered to us. And that is what the secret is. And the first book, even Muslims do not know this about Islam, talks about the Shahada, the meaning of the Shahada, and why there is so much that Muslims are ignorant of, which results in them not actually practicing Islam. So I will just check quickly to make sure that I have gone through everything that I wanted to cover. Okay, I think that is important. That is what I wanted to share with you. All is left for me to thank you for watching and being so patient to watch right until the end. This message is a really hot potato. Think about it and consider sharing it. share it quickly before it's taken down. And read the book. It's reinforcement, and it gives the justifications for what I am saying. If you wish to contact me, you are most welcome to do so. My email address is N for November, C for Charlie, K for Kilo, A for Alpha, M for Mary, D for Delta, A for Alpha, R for Romeo, at iafrica.com. nzkamda@iafrica.com. That is my email address. Contact me. I will be very happy to hear from you. I will do my best to respond to everyone. If I don't, be aware that I would definitely read all of them. And with that, I thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.